people, where the welcoming ceremony for visiting U.S. President Donald Trump is happening.
Chinese President Xi Jinping is walking towards the square outside the East Gate of the Great Hall of the People to welcome US President Donald Trump.
Indeed, this is the formal moment of a reception. President Xi Jinping is walking out of the Great Hall of the People to receive the visiting president, US President Donald Trump, as the guest of state, and we can see the
presidential motorcade.
Right, he is arriving.
US President Donald Trump is now arriving at Great Hall of the People, and we need to remind our viewers that this is the first state visit to China by a sitting US president in 9 years.
Right, and in Chinese diplomatic practice, actually the welcome is part of the message showing the visit is being handled at the highest political level, with the two presidents providing direct guidance to the relationship. And the two sets will, as what Pandong just said, last met face-to-face in Busan last October, and this is the first sitting US president visiting China in 9 years. And Beijing has described this head of state diplomacy as having an irreplaceable role in giving strategic direction to China-US relations.
Now we can see that the presidential motorcade has arrived at the East Gate of the Great Hall of the People. And this time, the two leaders are expected to have an in-depth exchange of views on major issues concerning China-US relations and world peace and development. Ahead of the visit, China said it's willing to work with the United States in a spirit of equality, respect and mutual benefit to expand cooperation, manage differences and inject more stability and certainty to a turbulent and changing world. And from the turnout of the press pool, we can see that this is a high-profile event attracting global attention. Major media from all around the world are watching closely.
And US President Donald Trump's
vehicle has arrived.
Is approaching the Great Hall of the People, where a grand welcoming ceremony is put on for him. The Great Hall of the People on the western side of Tiananmen Square is one of China's most important venues. US President Donald Trump Well, US President Donald Trump shakes hands with the Chinese personnel present at the welcome ceremony, and accompanied by Chinese President Xi Jinping.
And this is live footage from the square outside the East Gate of the Great Hall of the People in central Beijing. Chinese President Xi Jinping has just welcomed US President Donald Trump, and now President Trump is shaking hands with members and personnel of Chinese leadership and senior officials who are expected to attend the meeting between the two heads of state
And now, Chinese President Xi Jinping is shaking hands with the U.S. personnel present at the welcoming ceremony. And President Trump arrived in Beijing on May the 13th for a state visit at the invitation of President Xi Jinping, and Chinese officials have said the two leaders will exchange views on major issues concerning China-US relations, as well as world peace and development. And again, this is a first visit to China by a US president in almost 9 years, and also President Donald Trump's second visit since November 2017.
And China's diplomacy towards the United States, as many are saying, has been very consistent, and China is willing to work with the US in a spirit of equality, respect and mutual benefit to expand cooperation, manage differences and inject more stability and certainty into a turbulent and changing world. You're watching live footage from the square outside the East Gate of the Great Hall of the People in Beijing, where Chinese President Xi Jinping is holding a welcome ceremony for US President Donald Trump. This is the first visit by US President to China in 9 years. The two heads of state are now walking toward the reviewing stand.
下，中国人民解放军仪仗队列队完毕，请您检阅。
inspecting the honor guards, and this is a highly disciplined part of the ceremony, let's say. The rouge, the pace, the formation, and the music all fit in a solemn manner and harmony.
You're watching live footage from the East Gate of Great Hall of the People. The two heads of state, Chinese President Xi Jinping and US President Donald Trump, are now reviewing honor guards. And earlier, the band played the national anthems of the two countries, and a 21-gun salute was also held for the arrival of the US President. Now, the younger generation of China are showing their warm welcome to the friend from afar, US President Donald Trump.
They're waving flowers and national flags of the two countries, and together with the backdrop of honor guards marching past, and the leaders watching from the walking to inspect them. I think the Donald Trump US President is certainly feeling the very warm hospitality of the Chinese people. And for viewers, for us, it may seem to be very ceremonial, the welcome ceremony, but it also carries very practical meaning here. It gives both sides a very formal and orderly opening before they move into very detailed and very important discussions.
And we can see that President Trump has been reactively warmly to those younger generations welcoming his arrival.
Right. And it certainly created a very, very good atmosphere for the upcoming meeting.
That's right. And if we go back to political and diplomatic arena, this is the first state visit by sitting US President to China in 9 years. And the world is certainly paying much attention to this high-profile meeting because China and the United States are the world's two largest economies, and the world is facing a lot of turbulence nowadays. And how the two countries will get along with each other is not only about the two countries' future, but also about world peace and development.
And also operational directions of a global governance. That was the very warm welcome ceremony held for visiting U.S. President Donald Trump by the Chinese President Xi Jinping. And they seem to have a very good conversation at the end of the ceremony while walking back to the Great Hall of the People.
Yeah. And expectations are high for this high-profile meeting between the two heads of state. And U.S. President Donald Trump is paying a state visit to China from May the 13th to the 15th. And this visit is the first from the U.S. President to China in almost 9 years.
Right, and this very formal and warm welcome ceremony certainly opens very good atmosphere for the upcoming discussion and meeting between not only the heads of the two countries but also high-ranking officials talking about the implementations and the institutionalized architecture to keep the China-US relations in a stable way.
And the two presidents are now talking to each other just right outside the East Gate of the Great Hall of the People in central Beijing. And for our global viewers, the Great Hall of the People is on the west side of Tiananmen Square, and it's a major venue to host a major national and diplomatic events. And this is exactly the venue where the two presidents will meet for a in-person meeting. And the meeting is expected to cover a wide range of issues about China-US relations and also about world peace and development.
So